let's see, if you need closed captions, there's a live captioning button. You can hit the CC button down there in the Zoom tools. And we are recording. So this session is the watch our mentors interview each other session, which can be fun for me because I'm one of the interviewers. Maybe not as fun for Alejandro. Oh, it'll be fun though. We'll have a good time. I'm gonna interview Alejandro on sort of like a job fit interview. We'll just do about 20 minutes, then we'll debrief and kind of. I'll actually be interested to hear from all of you, like what you liked and what you thought could be improved about his answers. So a little feedback in real time, and then we'll switch, and John is gonna interview Indira on a more of like a technical interview. So again, 20 minutes, and then we'll 10 minutes to debrief. So a little bit of role playing here, you know. Alejandro is actually on my team at Zapter, so this might get a little weird. He might talk about his manager. We'll have to see how this goes. But anyway, so are you ready? Are you in character, Alejandro? Are you ready?
Yeah, I think so. Let's do it.
All right, cool. Alejandro, it's really good to talk to you today. I have an open role on my team at Zapier, and it's a front end role, as you know. So just want to kind of get to know you a little bit better and just see how you might be a fit for the position. So maybe you could start by just telling me just how did you get into web development?
All right. Yeah, sure. Well, I got into web development because, let's see, that's a long time ago. Let's see. So I studied computer science. So that's why. I mean, I liked programming when I first joined the university, when I started studying, and it was really cool. You know, like the fact that you can create things out of basically thin air. That is like a great ability to have. It's like you can create basically like worlds with your fingertips. So that's really cool. So when I graduated from the university, I looked for a job as a teacher, but I didn't get it, thankfully. So I'm from a city called Popayan, which is a small city that doesn't have any tech industry or anything. So, and I'm an only child. So surprisingly, my mom was telling me like, you have to go and you have to leave our hometown because there's nothing for you here. So I started to send my CV to other places. So I sent my curriculum to Bogota, like, I don't know, like to 80 places or something. It was insane. And to Medellin, and I got a job in Bogota in a small agency, and I was working with, that agency worked for a newspaper here in like a nationwide newspaper. And I was doing, the first thing that I did was Joomla and WordPress. And yeah, I guess it was not that fun. I'm not gonna lie, but I did it. And then I got a new job in another agency, but there I had like more freedom because I was the first engineer that they hired. So I get to work with a lot of new technologies for me. So for instance, I work with PHP, I work with Django, and I basically did everything. Like I deployed the sites, I built the sites, like I introduced Git to the company. I managed one person, and that was really cool. Difficult, but cool. You know, like managing people is hard. I bet you know that. So
yeah, I'm pretty aware of that. Yeah. That's really interesting. So yeah, I didn't know that I didn't actually kind of maybe get that far down on your LinkedIn profile, I guess. But what was it you didn't like about working with Joomla and WordPress? Or was it more the job, or was it the technologies, or?
It was both, I guess. Yeah, my boss in the first job was not a person that I really liked, without going into details. But yeah, and yeah, like the conditions, like the job, I don't know how to say this, like the job conditions that I had were not the best. I had to work on weekends without extra they didn't pay me extra on weekends, and I had to work like overtime, didn't get paid for that as well. So that sucks, right? But the technologies were like, I don't know, they're, in my opinion, you're really limited, because like when my thesis in the university was about using Google Maps to show the schools in my department. In the, I don't know, I don't think department is a word. I mean, let's see, what is the word for that, for the state that I lived in, right? So for
Oh, okay.
instance, California is the state, so yeah. So I
Mhm.
used Google Maps to show that, and it was basically a web application, right? So
Mhm.
that was like really cool. It has like these custom features, and Joomla was like installing plugins and tweak
Yeah.
the plugins, and that's about it. And it is really restrictive and really complicated to work with. It
Mhm.
was really complicated for me. In WordPress was the same. It's like
Mhm.
you're basically hand tied by the plugins, and you cannot do that much. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's
Very
why I didn't
sort
like
of
it.
strict API. So
Yep.
when you got to the agency, it sounded like one of the things you liked about that was just the chance to experiment with different technologies.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the fact that the people on the team, like my bosses, they trust me that I would
Mhm.
make the right choice. That gave me a lot of empowerment, I would say.
Mhm.
And feeling empowered is a great thing on a job. So like I could
Mhm.
make decisions, they trust me, and yeah, if I made a mistake, because I made a lot of mistakes there,
Uh-huh.
they were okay with that, as long as I,
Hmm.
like provide like solutions to the problem, instead of saying like,
Mhm.
like, yeah, I screwed this up and that's it. But instead
Yeah.
of saying like, I screwed this up, but the way to fix it is this, or we learned that, or like, they really like that. And yeah, it was a really cool place to work.
Mhm. Nice.
Yeah.
So, so what are you looking for in your next opportunity? What would that
Well,
next job ideally look like?
yeah, sure. I guess I'm looking the same, but in another scale.
Uh-huh.
Like, for instance, there we didn't have Git. We didn't have any like fancy
Mm.
technologies. We didn't have Git. I mean, that was weird. Like we had to work with USBs and all that. But anyways, that's another story. But yeah, I want to get to a place where I can give my ideas, where I can be heard as well,
Mhm.
and where, yeah, where I can have basically an impact, build cool things, get to many users as possible as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I know that you do that. You have a lot of customers, and yeah.
We do. Yeah, we work at a pretty big scale at Zapier. And yeah, I mean, the parts of the product that my team works on is seen by millions of people. So, um, I mean, that appeals to some people. It sounds like it might appeal to you.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
um,
sounds
it-
great.
so what are you looking for in a team? Like what makes for a good team for you?
That's a great question. So let's see. So one thing that is really important for me is that the team needs to have a mindset of, we either success as a team or we fail as a team, right?
Mhm.
So that is, I guess that is the key for me to be okay with working on a team, right?
Mhm.
So it is not about, I mean, you are an IC, an individual contributor to the team, but it's still like you work as a team, and you are nothing without your team. So
Mhm.
that's that's my ideal, to be like,
Right, right.
yeah, to work
Are there
together.
any?
And yeah.
Can you think of any like deal breakers, like things you would make you really not want to work on a particular team?
Oh yeah. Let's see. Oh my gosh. For instance, like something that is really harmful and that I have experienced in our teams is ego. So
Hmm.
when the ego gets in the way, the team suffers, and like everything is like, it has like a ripple effect, right? So
Hmm.
for instance, one time I worked with someone that didn't want to review my work because that person was not okay with what I did, because I took another approach
Hmm.
different than the one that that person suggested. So for instance, I don't want to be in a team where that happens, right? It's like there are different ways to do things, and yeah, I mean, you get to an agreement. Like if you, let's say, you make some change and it works and it is fine, but it is not my decision, then I'm okay with it, because like that will make the team go like move forward, and that is what matters. So ego is a bad thing. I don't want to be on a team where that is.
Yeah,
something.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I don't want to hire people who have big egos either. So that's actually really good to hear. So maybe tell me, what's some work that you've done that you're particularly proud of?
Well, okay, let's see. Okay, on my previous job, I worked on an agency, and we worked on a rebrand for a entertainment site. And I'm really proud of myself because we completed that project. Okay, it was a really difficult project, and technically speaking, was really difficult, and it had a lot of issues, right? But I'm really proud that we managed to deliver that. And the thing particular about that project was that the first time that I was a manager, so I mean, yeah, I was a manager for one person, but like that's kind of different. But here I was a manager for like 5 people maybe.
Oh wow.
And I had to talk to the stakeholders so yeah, let me rewind a little bit. So I worked on an agency in Medellin, and we had a team in Brooklyn. So I was the technical lead in Medellin, and I had to talk to the technical lead and the team on Brooklyn plus the client. So I managed to pull that off, I guess. So yeah, that was a really good experience, and I'm really proud of that. And yeah, like managing people is really hard. Like you find someone that is really motivated and wants to, like eat the world and do a lot of things, and working with that people is great. But you also have people that they don't care that much, or they just want to do their job and barely do it, and that's it. Like good enough not to be fired. So anyways, like I had a lot of difficult conversations like during like 8 months of that project. And yeah, I mean, I'm proud of the work that we did anyways. And the rebrand went out, and the client was really happy in the end. So
that's what matters, right? So that's interesting. So it sounds like there might have been, was there conflict within the team then at some point during that?
Yeah, I mean, not like conflicts per se, but I had a different, like I had to manage people from like in the complete opposite spectrums of how they work, right? So someone was like really interested in mentoring other people, right? Like mentoring people, like doing like a bit extra every time, like try to get the code base to a better place. But that other person was like, I can do this, and if I do it really quickly, I can start and I can do other things that are not my job. Like if I said we're using Scrum that time. So for instance, let's say that person had, we estimated that it was like about a story would take that person like 3 days, right? And if that person finished that story in 1 day, that person wouldn't say anything and start doing other things like watching YouTube videos, for instance.
Oh God. All right.
Yeah, so yeah, I had to deal with that, and yeah, it was.
Well, I feel like we should be interviewing you for a manager role instead of an IC role, but
no, I don't want to do that.
No,
at least
yeah,
not now.
you had enough. Okay.
Yeah, I had enough.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, we just have a couple minutes left, so I wanted to give you time to ask me questions. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do.
About Zapter, the company, the team, the kind of work we do, any of those kinds of things?
Yeah, I'm more interested.
Anything at all, actually.
Okay. I have a bunch, but let's see. So how do you, how do you make sure that you share, like that the knowledge is shared within your team, right? Let's say you have an engineer with a lot of experience, how do you make sure that the other engineers learn from that person?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So at Zapier, we have the company values, and one of the values is to default to transparency. So, part of what I do as a manager is I try to reinforce that value so that we are sort of constantly sharing in the team channel and in other ways, documenting things, all those kinds of things to make sure that that knowledge is all kind of comes out. And I mean, a big part of it, honestly, like we were talking about, teams that have ego and teams that don't, those kinds of things too, is like hiring people that want to share information. Like you may have in a previous job or something encountered people who kind of like to hoard information. It makes them feel sort of indispensable or something because they know the thing and no one else does. But that's not at all how I want my team to operate. And so everyone on the team, super into, like, here's this cool thing that I learned, and like, or here's this thing that's kind of necessary but not that cool. Like both things, kind of sharing all those things around the team sort of constantly. So it's we probably could get better with the tools that we use to share some of that information. But definitely the will is there to do it. So
I see. That sounds great. All right. Can I ask more questions or?
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. So let's see. So if you had like a magic wand to change something, what would you change? It could be at the team level, it could be at the company level, like, yeah.
That's a really good question. All right. I mean, one thing I would love if my team were bigger.
Okay.
If I had more people, because we have a lot of things that we want to do, a lot of things we know would be valuable for the company, and our team is sort of small and mighty is how I would describe our team at the moment. So it's not very big, but the people we have are really good, and they like want to do the right thing. So we still manage to get a lot of high value things done, but we're just constrained by the number of people on the team. But there are other things I would probably change about, like we have the team has sort of had to change focus several times in the time that I've been at Zapier now for about 2.5 years, and we've changed focus a bunch of times, and that's always takes a little bit of sort of readjusting and things. So if we could have a little bit more confidence that we're going to have a long-term area of the product to focus on, that'd probably be helpful as well.
I see. Yeah. Okay. And how do you, I mean, I've been working a lot, right? And when you miss a deadline, that could be a big deal sometimes, depending on where you work. So how do you handle that? Like, what happens if you miss a deadline, or what happens, like, tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the nice things about Zapier is that we are a software company first. Like I've worked in places that were not, like I worked at Disney, which is a media company. And so they didn't really understand how software was built. They had different expectations around those things. One of the nice things about Zapier, we're a software company. So most people in the company have a pretty good understanding of what it takes to build software, how long it takes, the fact that deadlines don't always get hit because scope increases or we discover some complexity in some old part of the code base or something. So yeah, I think like when we have had on projects where there's been sort of an expectation that we would be done by a certain time, our stakeholders, which are usually internal to the company, have been pretty understanding about the fact that we need to readjust the timelines based on the things that we've discovered. So it's really more on the team to be transparent about, we thought it was going to be done here. It's taking longer because we discovered this piece of scope that we have to, we're going to have to go back and kind of refactor something for a couple of weeks or whatever. Like just being open about the things that come up to just readjust expectations around the company. But really that's on myself. So we do what's called an EPD trio. So an engineering manager, product manager, designer. We're sort of the leadership group for our team. And so it's really on the EPD trio to be communicating that back out, to other, like the people that care about those things. That's not really like, well, I do that job better when my engineers tell me that things are slipping, right? So I have the information to pass up, but anyway, so in that sense, we work as a team to communicate those things.
Oh yeah, sounds really good. Really encouraging.
Cool.
Okay,
All right.
I like that.
All right.
I have one
You have
more.
any other? Okay, good. Perfect.
Yeah, last one, because we don't
All right.
have much time, but
Yeah.
what does it take to be really successful in Sapir? What do I have to do? Like maybe, I don't know, maybe you can give me some tips. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish more people asked this question in interviews. I'm looking at all the people on the call. Yeah, what it takes to be successful at Zapter, I think, is I'd say take some flexibility. I mentioned that we have had to kind of change our focus a little bit. Takes curiosity. So, you know, when I started at Zapier, we had this kind of monolithic application that we were working in. We're starting to pull those out into separate services, which requires learning, you know, new tech stacks and new ways of working and things. So, you know, that kind of being adaptable and curious and kind of having a mindset we are always learning, I think is one of the biggest things. But then also because we are a remote company, you need to be willing to write. I think just writing, like literally blogging and being, you know, communicating with your team in writing is a huge thing because we're not always online at the same time. You know, there are just documenting decisions is super important so we can come back and remember why we decided to do this thing a certain way. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. Great talking to you.
Right.
We'll get back to you soon or something.
All right.
Nice job, Alejandro.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. What do people think of that? Whew. That's so realistic.
It was a lot.
Especially when he started asking me questions. I'm like, wait, I'm interviewing. Yeah, time check. Yeah, we probably ran a little over. So, but any reactions to that? Would you hire Alejandro based on what you saw from him? Yeah,
a little bit iffy. I thought that was great. I thought he did really well. I would hire Alejandro.
Yeah.
One thing, and there's some nuance to what I'm about to say here. When you were talking about your previous positions that were not so great, I think it's fine if something is bad to say that thing is bad. But when you are trying to present yourself as someone who's going to be enthusiastic and do things, it can be good to sort of say more like, I was really excited to work on something beyond the scope of what was available there. Kind of frame it in the terms of what you want and what you're excited to go forward and do next, rather than say, oh, that was terrible, I really didn't like it. Not that you were too much in that direction, but that's just something to kind of bear in mind.
That's great feedback.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
It might help that like Alejandro and I talk all the time and we just had our one-on-one and like he's used to telling me bad things. So what else did people notice? Was there anything that Alejandro you felt like did particularly well, or what were you gonna say, Rachel?
I really liked how Alejandro asked you questions and then like asked kind of like, yeah, just because I know that's always important, but the way he asked questions, like I think did show a lot about like Zapier and your values and how you work on a team. And yeah, the cat came over for the whole time, so it's very into your
riveting. Yeah.
Okay, I missed a lot of it. I'm sure it was amazing because Alejandro is. But on the note of like asking questions too, I encourage you to not just wait till the end to ask questions, and he probably did this fine, but like it makes your conversation, your interview a lot more natural if when they're asking you questions, you're asking them right back in the moment.
Yeah, I think that can work. You have to kind of gauge with the interviewer a little bit whether they're okay with that. Like I've seen places where they want to, like they have a strict thing they have to get through, and then you have a time for your questions at the end.
Right, like don't ask the questions that are like unrelated that, you know, but like if you can like have some back and forth rather than here's a question for you, here's just an answer, and then like dead stop.
Yeah, like I asked Alejandro about like what kind of team would you want to work on, and that'd be a perfect opportunity for him to say like, tell me a little more about the team that I'd be on, right?
Totally. Or even little leading things that kind of make the conversation more natural. Like, does that pretty well align with what your team is like, or how does that align?
Yep, that's good. And definitely be on the treadmill while you're interviewing.
I need to practice drinking and walking.
What else? Anything else? I can only see a few faces. So Rachel, Waverly, Viet, any feedback?
He did great. Also, he was uncomfortable throughout most of the thing, but you could see how he became comfortable in the middle. Especially when he started asking his own question. He's like, now I own the room.
Yeah.
Even though he knows you and he works for you, he wasn't comfortable today.
Yeah.
I actually think that's a really good thing to point out, is that having done hundreds and hundreds of interviews, everybody is nervous when they come in. It's super normal. It's super okay. And the interviewers are totally used to it. Every single person that walks in is nervous. And sometimes they relax partway through and sometimes they don't. It's fine. Either way, it's fine. But just know that that's a very natural, very normal thing.
Super. It's like supernatural. That's not really what I mean, but but also the interviewer wants you to succeed. Like they're trying to find the right person for their role, right? So they really do want you to do well, because that's like, oh, good, I found the person, you know? So, they're not in there like trying to be all gatekeepery and stuff, usually. So, kind of maybe that helps you relax a little bit about it. All right, I think it's probably time to hand it over to John and Indira.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. Nice to meet you. My name is John, and I'm the hiring manager for Ignite, or the fictional team name here. First things first, I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Is it Indira? Is that correct?
Indira. I just care about people saying the letters at the right place.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Anita. So let's go ahead. If you want to share your screen, we can take a look at the evaluation that I've done for your code submission, and then we can jump on in. Normally, we might walk through this a little bit more. I know we only have 20 minutes, which is a small section of time, relatively speaking. So overall, I thought this was a fantastic submission. As you can see, it's mostly fives, a couple of fours. The one spot that I did see a little bit of room for improvement was in that note on the succinctness. Looks like you could have simplified that logic a little bit. So what I'd love to do first is just to go in and make those adjustments that are kind of mentioned in that comment there, and then we can quickly add a feature to the code as well. And I'll give you a choice of several different features to pick from.
Sounds good. I'm not sure if I can. Okay.
So the one kind of has the alternate version already spelled out for where you're splitting the words. I'd love to see the paragraphs done similarly.
Yeah. So split. So we're just doing this. Wait, this and this.
Spoiler alert for anyone still working on the take-home exercise, by the way. This is going to be a little bit of the solution code.
So So the regex may need to be adjusted a bit. So the paragraphs may not be split right at the moment. So
No problem.
Look at this. See what it's doing first. Okay. So it basically doesn't know anymore where my paragraph is splitting. So let me look at this.
Just as a side note for the audience, that was a great thing to point out, that you realized that it wasn't going to be quite correct there when you first did it. That was really good.
Yeah. This regex is okay. I need debug. That's it.
Yeah, I think the specific trick is that regex was only for more than 2 new lines in a row. So it's no longer recognizing just 2 new lines.
Okay. So in the paragraph. I said not stop.
Also, this is really cool for me. I'm not a React developer, so seeing the debugging process is really interesting. It's fun.
Maybe it only works once. It's only given one. Maybe this is it. I need to remove the last selection. Going to block this.
Yep, perfect. I think that's just right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice work. So let's go ahead. Again, normally I would chat about that maybe a little bit more, but in the interest of time, let's just go ahead and move straight on to the feature for the ad. I can pull that up on my screen. If you still have that link handy, you can also do it on yours since you're already sharing the screen either way. It's totally fine.
I think it's.
Yeah, it's just right there.
So, yeah.
Again, spoiler alert, these are the extra features that you may be asked to.
So I think we're gonna do the margins. So let me.
I feel like margins, yeah, would work well. This, you know what? One thing we haven't modified this. This is still for the command line version in this tool rather than the React app. So I'll adjust that later. But for now, instead of having an option called margin, you can just define a constant in your application for what the margin should be, and that should be fine.
I was thinking of adding an input.
That works too. That's great.
Yeah. But I do remember having a question, so let me go through these. So allow the user to specify a number of blank lines at the top and bottom of the output, an empty space at the right and left sides. Can you elaborate more what it means an empty space at the right and left side?
Sure. Literally space characters. So if a margin was 4, for example, each line would start with 4 space characters and then have the line. You don't actually have to add the space characters on the right side as it specifies below, not to add any trailing white space, but it should only go to 76 instead of all the way to 80, so that there's still those 8 blank spaces at the edge. So that if you were to print this out in a terminal or in a box that was 80 characters wide, you would have 4 spaces worth of space on the left and the right, assuming a mono space font.
Would that be 72 instead? Because I feel like 76 only has 4 extra and we're putting them at the beginning.
It's 4 on the left and 4 on the right.
So is it only 72 characters total to get to 80?
The 76 counts the 4 space characters. So you get 4 spaces and then whatever is in your words, and then 4 kind of spaces, but they're not actually there. It's just blank space at the end. So 4 spaces and then 76 characters worth of text.
Okay, we're taking the 76 into account, the 4 spaces. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. That might be a little confusingly phrased. My apologies for that.
Okay. So what I was thinking is adding an input that it's going to be taking that number, the margin value. I did add a variable here with the max line length that I can use state instead. So I update that value depending on what the input is. And then this max line length, it's used down here. So for the spaces at the beginning, I can add that functionality into in here in this format paragraph. So whenever in my else condition is where I'm restarting a line. So when I restart a line, I can add those 4 spaces here at the beginning. And the ones at the beginning and at the top and the bottom margins, I can handle that here in the transform text before and after. One thing that I would need to make sure is like, if it's a completely empty input, do we want to not show anything or still show margins of that space, of that amount of space?
That's a great question. I love the way that you're asking about the edge cases there. Let's go ahead and just put the 4 spaces in, even if it's completely empty, just for the sake of simplicity.
Okay.
Or the 4 new lines. Sorry, my bad. 4 new lines at the beginning and the end for simplicity.
Okay. I'm gonna start by using by adding the new input that I'm gonna use as the margin. So
yeah, I think that's a better name. It's a good choice.
I need to define this function. I'm gonna use I'm gonna use 0 as the default value to study. Set margin value. And I also need to update my mask alignment. Maybe okay. My transform text. I do a for loop. Oh, this needs to be a 30 output. So I'm gonna this one, and I need to do the same thing after I add all my paragraphs.
I'm curious about a couple of things there. First,
Yes.
why do you have the parentheses on line 31? And also, why 2 new lines there?
Hmm. 2 new lines. Yeah, it's one. Basically because I was thinking about how we were doing the change between paragraphs and they were 2 at a time.
Oh, got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. No worries.
And it's the other way, looks like. But yeah, I don't need parentheses, so I don't know why.
That's fine.
Let's see. I can initiate my output with 4 spaces. The chart count, I'm gonna start it at 4 because of these 4 spaces that I'm adding here. Max line length that should have been updated here. Here I'm gonna change it to 5 and I'm gonna add the 4 spaces. Oh wait, no, I'm doing something wrong. Way too wrong. Sorry. So +1 plus margin. So chart count is actually margin. I don't add 4 things here. I add a for loop. There's probably a one-liner way of doing this, but I don't know it on the top of my mind.
I don't worry about that kind of fiddly detail when we're in the middle of an interview problem. So anything that you write here that works is going to be fine. It's good if the names are all good, but other than that.
So the number of spaces that I add are in the margin, and I need to make sure that I add that here as well. So I'll split this into a couple of lines, and probably move this into a function to try to not have as much repeated code.
Okay. Again, I really appreciate that you call that out as something you would do in a real world situation, but we don't have to worry about it in the middle of an interview.
Yeah, so let's see how this works.
Oh, I think you might have one typo on line 64. Just equals plus instead of plus equals.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
No problem.
Oh, I didn't hear the margin. And yeah, check out started. Somebody does 4.
Oops. Something didn't work out.
Yeah. So
okay.
Let's debug.
Yep.
Okay, this summit button seems to only work the first time. Or maybe I need to update the text for it to work. So let me make sure I have the right values. Oh, I haven't actually. Click submit. No. Transform text.
I wonder, do we need to put the output text maybe in a pre-block just so that you can see the spaces?
You know what?
Again, I don't do as much front end stuff, so it's the like for pre-formatted in the brackets, and that way it should make it a monospace font, and then it'll show all of the text verbatim rather than collapsing all of the white space, so that we can see that there's the 4 spaces at the front and at the top.
I think it would still do it, but I just haven't actually clicked here. Okay, so the first thing is splitting the output.
Okay.
Splitting the input on the. So I have 2 paragraphs. Make sure the value of my margin has been set. It's 2. Three. So right now my output, I have those 4 spaces. Now I'm going to my first paragraph. I need to add 4 spaces.
Yeah, I think your code might be working correctly here. It's just that we can't see the left margin because the browser is formatting the text in the rendering phase, and it formats it by stripping out all the extra white space, which we're intentionally putting white space in, and the browser is hopefully pulling it back up so we can't see it.
No, but it was given an extra line for, there was 1 line per word. So that's the part that was odd that I'm trying to do.
That's true, yeah. Is it still doing that? It looked like it wasn't still doing that when you reloaded, but I could be mistaken.
So right now I'm at 4. So I add this. You went to a second line. The shark count says 45. I think margin is taking it as a string instead of taking it
yeah,
as a value.
that's plausible. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
So
when you do a string plus an integer, you get a string that is those 2 numbers put together. Okay, that makes sense. And then when you evaluate that as an integer, it turns it back into that's got it.
I'm not sure how to do this, so I'm gonna get help from my friend Google. How to cast a string number. On this.
Yeah, it's a very JavaScript kind of a bug.
It seems to say parse int, so let's try that. And it would be in here. And also here. I didn't even do it at the beginning where we're setting it.
Yeah, I really like that you switched to doing that as it came in rather than each individual spot. I think that's a fair approach.
Let's see what happens.
Hey.
I think there's more at the top than the bottom.
I can't tell. That looks about right. Maybe not. It might be more at the top.
Yeah. Let me see what there's. There will be less at the bottom. Versus.
Oh, I got it.
Oh, I'm using the same variable name.
If I'm reading this right, I think the bottom is always going to be one fewer than the top in terms of the number of blank lines. I think that the trick is that every new line that you put at the top of the file ends up being a blank line in the output. But at the last line, since there isn't a new line at the end of that last string, that new line is only, it goes at the end of the string of text that you've got, and then the rest of them are the actual blank lines.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what happened when there were 0? Oh, let's say just having 1 in that case. See what we ended up with.
That's a good idea.
Just a time check. We're about 6 minutes to the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Sorry, thanks for taking it there.
Yeah, I think you're right. So it's just adding an extra one at the end.
So overall, I think you did really well. Again, I would totally hire Indira. The amount of sort of guidance that I was providing there is going to vary a lot from interviewer to interviewer. Some people will just stare at you blankly while you do it. Other people will, it'll be like a full-on pairing session. So just be aware that that will be different depending on the particular interviewer. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot of feedback. I thought you did really well. I love the way that you talked through your thought process. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just going to say, amazing work, because it's hard enough to do this with just one interviewer. So with a whole gallery of people watching you, that's like the pressure. I can't, like, you did amazing. I thought that was great.
Yeah, you particularly did well calling out your thought process as you were doing each thing. I love the fact that you, when you knew something wasn't going to work, you said this won't work because blah, and then you did it to observe that the behavior was what you wanted. Yeah, just really, really well done.
John, do you have advice on what somebody should do if they are just kind of like fully stuck? Like, what should you say? What should you do?
Sure. There's a few things that I would suggest in that situation. One thing that, like, first off, just go ahead and be open about it. Just say to the interviewer, I'm a little stuck here. I'm going to step back and think about this for a moment. So just, explain your thought process as you're going, and in that moment, that's your thought process. And then do that, stop trying to write code. That's the biggest thing that I would suggest to anyone who gets stuck. Stop trying to just blindly code your way out of it, because that rarely works. What you need to do is get the whatever insight it is that you're missing, that you can then translate into that code. So if you don't know what code to write, don't write it. So step back, think to yourself. One thing that I do, and that I think helps some people, not everyone, is to kind of say to yourself, if I were just going to do this like with my brain and no computers, right? This input had come in on a piece of paper, and I was going to write the output on a different piece of paper. Like, what would I do with my own brain? Like, what are the steps I would go through to actually do this? How would I start writing it down? Where would I switch to the next line or whatever? And a lot of the times when you take the computer out of it, you can think through the process, and it's just, I don't know, it's just easier to sort of see just the logic of it rather than the what's the code and how do I write the right syntax to do this thing. You can just think of the steps, and then it becomes a matter of just translating the steps that you already figured out. Because you could, I'm sure if I handed you these instructions, you could do it by hand. You could write the correct output, I'm sure. And so once you kind of observe your own brain, what is your own brain doing to solve that problem, you just have to translate that then into the code syntax of how to tell a computer to do it the same way. That works for some folks. Other people don't. It's kind of the approach that I take when I get stuck. But you know, your mileage may vary.
I love that. In the chat for the last interview, I wrote like the drop it one. I was like, prepare yourself a couple phrases for saying like, oh, that's a great question. Can I get just a second to think about it? Another thing that I've done in the past is like have a notepad, and even if you're not actually writing notes, having a minute to take to yourself without like the awkwardness, like, yeah, give me just a second. I want to like take some notes real quick. And you can like look away and not feel awkward. Like I'm just staring at you. It's like kind of take some of the pressure off and like gives you time to collect yourself, because you can get really frazzled and like just completely forget where you are and what you're doing. So like take a minute to yourself. It's okay.
Yeah. I think it's totally fine even to say like, hey, do you mind if I go grab a drink of water real fast? I'm just gonna get something, and just walk away. Just like walk away and come back. It'll take you 30 seconds, but it'll let you reset a little bit.
On that kind of note of getting frazzled and stuff, we had a speaker come in a while ago now called Lyra, who gave a presentation about how to kind of regulate your body a little bit in these situations, like where you're kind of being, you know, it's a high stress situation, kind of ways to kind of bring the heart rate down a little bit, and like kind of like when your body is in that mode, your brain just kind of doesn't work the same way. So if you can get your, you know, kind of all those kind of that biofeedback under control, it'll open up your brain to kind of actually solve the problems and stuff too. So if you haven't watched that already, I'd recommend, it's in the Learning Together channel. I can try to pull up the link, but definitely watch that and just see if there's anything you can pick up from that.
Yeah. Another thing that I think is helpful to call out is like this technical interview was awesome because Indira had a lot of time to sort of like code and think through things and Google things. But I've been on several technical interviews that are a lot faster paced and you don't really have time to do that. And I would also like prepare in advance some ways to say like, I actually don't know the answer to that, but this is how I would find it, or like the steps I might take to find it. But, like prepare that like phrase in advance so it like rolls off and you seem really confident about the fact that you could find it. You just don't know the answer right now.
I love Indira when you said, I'm going to ask my friend Google.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
That was a great
do make sure that your interviewer is okay with you looking up things on Google. Like I'm always fine with it, but some are not. So just be aware.
Yeah, so like you can ask first the interviewer and then Google. That's usually like the flow, I guess. But since he just mentioned, oh, I'm not familiar with JavaScript, the most people would follow up with like, yeah, go ahead, yes, you go.
Honestly, the support interview at Zapter doesn't let you Google anything, and they ask some like highly technical questions.
Oh, is that right?
How am I supposed to know this?
One last tip. I actually have, speaking of interviews, an interview I need to go conduct for real. But always feel free to ask for clarifications if there's anything you're not sure about in the exercise. In fact, sometimes people will intentionally put something unclear to look for you to ask for clarifications. So just be aware of that. And I really have to do another thing now, so I'm a minute late. I'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John. Thanks so much.
No worries.
Bye.
I feel like that was really good. That's really. Again, thanks for being on the hot seat, Indira. That was amazing. And hopefully, was that helpful for people? Was that good to kind of watch Alejandro and Indira answer these things? Okay, cool. I know. Well, you weren't the one being interviewed either, so.
I would love to be interviewed.
Yeah.
That
okay.
was like fun. Honestly, like I swear a superpower to public speaking in general or holding professional conversations or interviewing is to like have a handful of like go-to phrases in your pocket so that if you do get frazzled, you still look very composed and put together and like you know where your head is at and you're not losing it.
Yeah, good tip. So yeah, so go back and watch the Lyra video, watch Mindy's presentation on the PDAC, that problem-solving formula, because if you're given a problem to solve, and if you want to follow those steps, it's actually I think as an interviewer, I'd find it really impressive that someone has a framework for doing this. This is amazing, you know? So, and it can help kind of take some of the pressure off of being in the moment of it and stuff as well. And yeah, so hopefully that's helpful as you go into your own, you're going to spend the next like couple of days practicing with your pair buddy on Pramp and then go into your own mock interviews. So it should be fun. Thanks everybody. And we'll see, actually, I guess we'll see you back in about an hour for the how to tell your story session.
See you there if you can make it. Everybody have a good one. See you soon.
Yep. Take care. See ya.
Bye.